Hey, I'm Alan Furstenberg,
And I'm Mark Tucker, and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. How's it going, Mark?
It is going well this week.
It's been an interesting week for me. Um, yeah, an interesting week. I want to show you this tool that has been it's been all the buzz recently. It's called NotebookLM. It's from Google. This might not seem like a very developer concept initially, but I think you'll see there are some things that I think developers both can learn from it and some ways that developers can use it.
All right, love to learn more about it. Go ahead.
So NotebookLM is it's kind of a way to collect things and be able to ask questions about it. And so the idea is you'd be able to create a notebook and you'd put into it all of your notes, and then you can ask questions about your notes and so forth.
Okay.
So, for example, I went and tried it out, and this is using some stuff that's was not in the original Notebook LM. It's been added to over the past few months, but I put into it the video of a bunch of recent episodes of Two Voice Devs. One
Okay.
of the things you can give it these days is you can give it a YouTube link, and it gets the transcript of the YouTube link and uses that as source material. So so you have this list of sources that you have, and you can add more sources. And you can just drag and drop files from your desktop, and those need to be PDFs or text files or Markdown or MP3s. You can import files from Google Docs or Google Slides. You can give it a YouTube link, or you can give it a website. That's actually incorrect. You can give it a web page, which is different than a website.
Right.
And I'm a little miffed at that.
So it doesn't crawl a website. It just takes the URL of the
Right,
takes the contents of the page URL that you gave it.
right.
Okay.
Or you can just, paste text in.
Okay.
Um, and once you do, it adds it to this list of sources here. And once you have sources, you can start just asking questions.
Interesting.
So I don't know, any questions you might have about the first 10 or so episodes of this season? Or
Oh, oh. So it's so okay. So what summarize the what they talked about, what we talked about in the in relationship to AI and data. Let's do that.
so summarize what Mark and Alan think about AI and data. Sound good?
Sounds good.
And this is like, a fairly routine chatbot. This is pretty normal. And it gives us this, Mark and Alan's thoughts on AI and data and software development. I didn't ask about software development. It picked that up on its own.
Yep.
Data is a tool for understanding user behavior. It's got some quotes here. Ooh, Alan highlights the need for making data accessible and understandable for both humans and AI systems. He believes in bridging the fuzzy human digital computer divide.
Did you say
And,
that?
well, I don't know. Let's find out. I can click on the link, and it goes down and tells me that in episode 205, I did say that apparently, because there's the transcript with it.
Oh, very nice.
And what this reminds me of is what we talked about way back in episode 50 of wanting to have this voice control where you could just ask it questions and it would just take you to where we said that.
Yeah, exactly.
Except this, also summarizes in the process. So, a bunch of stuff, all of it with references. And if I like it, I can, copy it somewhere or I can save it to a note. Notes are saved responses or other things that we can enter in. you can kind of think of them as collections of specific snippets that we want to save for the future. Normally, the notes aren't actually used for too much else. So notes don't become searchable on their own unless you specifically search them. So we can reopen it and read it, follow the references, and so forth. We can't follow the references. That's interesting. Saved responses are view only. That's nice, but what do I?
Does it have a link list at the bottom, like a?
It doesn't.
It's interesting. Okay,
That's interesting. Okay,
that would be helpful if you could.
that would be a yeah. It also says 10 citations, and there are more than 10 citations here.
So is each of the sources on the left a separate citation then? Is that what it's doing?
Each of these sources is a source.
Okay. But then a
So it's,
citation, is it like source one is episode 201?
oh, there we go. If you click on them, it will take you to the citation
Oh, okay.
of where we said that.
What I'm wondering is like, how could this be used by, I don't know, high school, college students? Like if they have a book that they need to do a report on, did you say it accepts PDFs
It
or?
accepts PDFs.
So if they have a PDF version of the book, they could suck that in there and then they could ask questions
Mm-hmm.
about the book.
Right. And save that question, the result of that question in a note. And now you've got a bunch of notes
Right.
that have summarized different aspects of it that you can now put together on your own, or copy and paste them and say and have something else summarize it for you or something.
So I like it using it as a tool to help you get to the information and kind of coalesce or summarize information, um, and then you could go off and like study for a test with that information or use that to help you gather your thoughts to write a paper, you know,
Right. So
manually
so
write the paper. I'm just clarifying that.
so here's another example though is we can now click on that note and we've got some other stuff down here including help me understand this or critique it or suggest related ideas or let's create an outline for this. So it creates a new note that will be an outline of the saved note that we had looked at before answering that question. And there's
Interesting.
kind of a structured outline for that. Okay.
And is it limited to text?
Um, I believe everything that comes in is turned into text in one fashion or another.
Okay.
That's a good question. So, for example, although these are videos, it says it just works on the transcript of those videos.
Right.
When we go to add more sources, docs, slides, when you upload stuff, most of that is text format, audio. It converts that into a transcription of it.
Okay.
When we look at these, for example, it shows us the transcription of that source, but it also gives us a summary, some key topics, and a link to the video, but we're working off of the transcript.
Gotcha. That's still pretty helpful though.
It's really, I think what's remarkable about this is that it's using AI in a bunch of different ways. And it's put them all together in a really, really convenient user interface.
Right.
So, I can summarize a single document, or I can ask it for a summary of everything that I have, or I can ask it a specific question as part of chat, or I can take one of those results and ask for a summary of it, or, and this is the cool one. So they also have this thing called Notebook Guide, which gives you, help me create a frequently asked question based on the source material, or a study guide off of it, or a timeline off of it, or,
Interesting.
and this is the one that people have literally flipped their wigs over, create a podcast about this material.
Oh, interesting.
It takes a few moments when you ask it to do so, but while it's generating it, we can see it's also got suggested questions to ask. So it's come up with questions and answers. It's got a summary of all the documents, which in this case doesn't make so much sense because every
No.
week we've got a different topic.
Yeah.
But if you're and I'll show you another example in a minute. So it's generated a 20-minute long podcast about our podcast. Let's hear what it sounds like.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going deep today, folks. A deep dive into the world of developer tools and platforms.
Yeah, the very foundation of how all that software you use gets built, deployed, and how it actually gets into your hands.
And it's evolving fast. We're talking cutting-edge concepts, new trends, the whole shebang. Buckle up.
Not just the tools themselves, but like how all these processes are being completely reshaped by AI.
It's a wild ride for sure. And for this deep dive, we're tapping into the brilliant minds over at the Two Voice Devs YouTube channel.
They've given us a goldmine of insights, really. Stuff like managing these complex...
Wow, let's have like a little conversation there.
So I liked having an AI call us brilliant. That's nice to hear.
Yeah, no, that is funny. It's very conversational. And
very conversational,
and it's
very
yeah.
natural sounding.
Yeah.
Which is why people are going wild over this. The downside is it's the same two voices.
Yeah.
Everyone is hearing the exact same two voices. And their style is kind of the same. They've just started introducing a little bit of variety and a little bit of way you can control that. But the podcasts all kind of sound the same, just about different topics. But can you just, there's so many ways that you can apply that. It's just kind of amazing. That was the Two Voice Devs one. Let me show you this one. Yeah, so this was me taking, so I said, when you ask it to get a website, it only gets one page. This is how I found that out. So I then turned to a service that would scrape a website and turn the pages into PDF.
Okay.
And I pointed it at Google's documentation for Gemini.
Oh, nice.
So it turned 41 pages into PDFs. And there's a limit of only 50 sources right now. So if I was doing, if I spent more time on this, I'd find a better way to deal with this. But this is, this was not too bad. So it came up, I have about 40 pages of the documentation about AI Studio. I discovered that some of them are in other languages, so it doesn't help a great deal in providing new information. But it's still able to summarize the document fairly well. It gave me an English summary of this document, which is impressive.
Yep.
And again, so we can take a look at the notebook guide, and it's suggesting, study guide, table of contents, suggested questions. This is where we could generate the audio and customize it. A summary of all of them. The provided sources are all related to Google's Gemini API and the Google AI Studio. What are the core features and capabilities? Let's find out. What are the core features and capabilities? And kind of my goal with this whole thing is to be able to say, if I pointed at a PDF document of an API specification or of a programming language or of a library's documentation, can I just start asking questions and it will give me functions? So this is how this could be useful to developers.
Yeah, I see that.
Summary of what it does with plenty of references to, enhanced multimodality.
Now, on the list of sources, is there a way to exclude which sources are being involved in a specific chat? So
Sure.
I'm thinking about if you've got 5 documents on one topic and 3 on a different one, you could just toggle the ones on and just have a conversation about a certain subset of documents because they may not be related at all.
You can turn which documents on and off you want. It tells you how many sources it's working with. I think if you click on this, you can choose all or as many as make sense for whatever question you want at that moment.
All right.
And you see how quickly it's answering some of it too. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
In terms of performance. Now, there are some serious downsides to this. The biggest one, which again impacts us as developers, is there is no API for this.
Hmm.
So, if I wanted to add 50 YouTube videos, I have to, one at a time,
Yeah.
say add source, YouTube, enter in the link, fine. And I have to do it manually. There's no way to say, for example, use this document, and as the document gets updated, update your reference to it, update your knowledge of it.
Okay, so you'd have to remove the source and re-add it or
So you have
something.
to resource it, which wouldn't be so bad if there was an API,
Yeah,
but there isn't.
yeah. No, I understand
Um,
that.
and while
So this is free, correctly? Correct?
this is free right now, yes.
Okay.
And there's limitations, like you're limited to 50 documents
Yeah.
or 50 sources. But it's also pretty impressive, or you're limited to 50 sources per notebook. I don't think there's a limit on the number of notebooks you can have. And while some things about it are a little irritating, so if we look at the audio overview, for example, I can do things like share it so that it's public, and create a share link for it and so forth. And I can download it, but there's no way to automatically export it. So there's no API to generate this audio and get
Right.
this audio, or do anything with it. So a lot of it right now still is very manual, in some ways almost tedious.
Yeah.
You need to get it into a PDF format so that you can do things with it. You need to get it into into specific formats. But what it's doing right now is still kind of amazing. And it's not just that it's doing it, it's that it's doing it with a really, really nice user interface.
Yeah. It does. It does seem definitely user focused. It's been a while since I've looked at ChatGPT and their concept of GPTs, but is this in some ways similar? Probably it seems like it's more advanced, but wasn't the concept of a GPT that you could link specific data to and call it a GPT? So then whenever you make do queries, it's against the document that you associated it with, or
Yeah, there was some of that. So it's related to being able to. I mean, GPTs are similar in the way that you do have a bunch of sources, and you can ask questions of those sources. And the questions that you ask could be things like, create an outline of this. So in that sense, it's the same, but that's a very, very narrow chat interface. This is really kind of expansive.
yeah,
This is saying, I like that, extract that into a note, and now let's do something with that note.
yeah,
It's really the whole user-friendly package of this that makes it so much more powerful. And the fact that, you could share notebooks with other people.
yeah. So when you share a notebook, you get the list of sources, you get the any of the
Yep.
notes. Um,
You're sharing it in basically the same way that you share any Google Drive document.
okay,
So it's very, very, um, I don't know, it's not perfect. It's far from perfect.
right,
But I really think they've kind of tapped into a broad based tool that people can use in a lot of different ways. And as developers, I think there's a lot to learn from this, in the sense of, here's a good pattern to
yeah,
learn. As you are building your own knowledge systems that use AI, here's a good way to use it. And as a developer, here is a tool that you can use in different circumstances.
right,
So for another example is, if I'm building something based on specification. I've got, my client has given me design notes, and they've given me protocol requirements, and they've given me a bunch of stuff. I can now put it all in one place and say, where in the world did the client specify what color they wanted?
yeah.
And I can look it up and use it. So it's a great reference in that sense.
Yeah, and so and you
Um,
can go to the specific source, and not only that, to the location inside that source. So you're like, oh, okay, this is where.
right. And it's kind of at the point where for stuff like that, I'm like, okay, and I want all my email in here as well about this project. And eventually I'm going to want my code in this project because,
Yeah.
I want to be able to search my code. And, you could see a lot of things that you'd want to do that I am sure they're getting to,
Yeah.
because this is completely caught people off guard. Nobody expected this sort of, expected it to work this well or to capture this much attention.
Yeah. No, it's definitely impressive as a tool, and it seems like um, it's simple enough that this would be a good entryway into practical, personalized AI. Um,
Yes.
and
And I think the neat aspect of the practical personalized AI is also that it uses it in so many different ways.
yeah,
You're tapping into it when you click on an individual one. And I don't want to know why the video is unavailable at the moment, but um, you know, it taps into it when you try to understand a specific note, or when it's suggesting questions, or when you ask freeform questions of it
right,
and it gives citation answers, or when it generates a podcast summary of it or an overall summary of it.
yep,
The fact that it uses these tools in slightly different ways all over the place, I think it's something that we as developers, that as we start to incorporate AI into our tools, we need to keep in mind as well,
right.
that it doesn't need to be one size fits all.
Yeah, and I agree, and I can see how this could be used in lots of different situations. The previous place that I worked was working on having a plugin for like Zoom, and so every transcript of every company meeting could be then searched, and like what were the action items, or what did we talk about, or so that's interesting that we might be approaching a world where we do a lot of meetings online now, which lends itself nicely to that, but it could be a lot of corporate knowledge, or even different team knowledge. You can have it subdivided for different things, like this is corporate stuff, or here's a fact when you're starting a company, here's the latest and greatest things that we as a company care about from our different company wide meetings. But then
Sure.
different projects, or teams or things.
Well, I think what you bring up is a great point. One of the things that's been neat is we do start getting these summaries of meetings. You've got Otter will
Yep.
get a transcript and summarize a meeting for you. I see a billion Otter bots show up, and those are great, but they're isolated. It's
Yep.
one thing. Now, what if you take all of those summaries, and every time right afterwards, it automatically gets put into a notebook,
Yep.
and then that means that I, as the meeting organizer, can now come in and ask it, or if there was an API, it could automatically say, um, what were the action items from this meeting?
Yep.
What were the items that we said we wanted to cover at the last meeting that were not covered in this meeting?
Yeah.
What do I need to do before the next meeting? What are the items that should be on the old items agenda for the next meeting?
Yep.
And turn that into a note.
Yeah.
And now you've got a note that does that. And then you can start asking questions of the note.
Yeah. No, this is good. This is a very cool tool. I do have another question. So it focuses. I can see how it works well with text, but how does it work with like code or something that's
I don't know. I haven't tried it.
okay?
But my guess is it doesn't it my guess is that it does not treat the code as code.
Yeah, that's kind of my that's kind of my guess too. Or even getting enough code in there for like a single project, you'd probably easily hit the 50 source limit. So
Right.
so it may
I
not
mean,
be necessarily great to like ask questions specifically about your code.
but you could easily see that a variant on that tool, and we've
Yeah,
seen code assistants.
yeah,
I mean, we've got Copilot, we've got GitHub Copilot, we've got my Google Code Assist.
Yeah.
They're all doing stuff like that, and that's kind of their goal. Many of them are more aimed at code completion, but I could easily see wanting to be able to do, ask questions of your code. But then here's where I think it might start getting interesting. Tie it into your automated test process
Yep.
so that your nightly test run, your nightly test build, the automated reports for it show up in a notebook. So the next morning, you could say, did any of my code fail last night?
Well, that's interesting. I like the ability to, because you know which commits were your commits, and
Right?
and I do like the idea of it tying into more your Git repo. So, for example, like you could ask questions, even like historical questions about code. When
Mm,
was this file updated to include? I know there's a blame feature, but it could be, instead of like a line basis, it could be more of a feature, or more of a, you
yeah.
could ask a bigger question about it, and it would go through, and you could ask questions about that, or about dependabot things like, okay, what files in our code need to, what versions, because there's always like dependencies of dependencies, and it's the, it's that dependency that has the old version of the library that's causing some, some CVE to trigger, and just trying to understand how to handle a project. So just like, I like the idea of having it go, not only breadth of like all files, but like depth as far as like history of each file,
Yes.
or
I
commit comments, or
and I think this isn't something that we're seeing a lot of.
yeah,
Everyone's still I think everyone's still trying to wrap their heads around how do I deal with one thing. And NotebookLM and others that are like it are starting to say, well, okay, that's a good start, but now how do we start putting all of these different things together?
right,
How do we put different types of information that make sense together? I think those are going to be the next step in the tools that we see. So yeah,
yeah,
we can get an overall summary. How do we get a narrower summary? How do we get a summary of our summary? How do we get a summary that I can listen to in the car on my way to work in the morning?
yes, yeah. No, that's good.
And I think that's where Notebook LM has started to answer that question.
Well, very cool tool, and I'm definitely going to check it out more. I've got some ideas. Going to recommend it to my college age kids in case they want to use that
Yep.
in their analysis of different books or assignments that they have to understand.
Can you imagine, for example, putting in research papers and then saying, sure, here's a few hundred pages of research papers. Turn that into a podcast that I can listen to on the bus.
Yeah,
And if there's something I find interesting, well, okay, I will then go and say, this is interesting. Point out to me where we talked about this. And it'll say, oh, it was, on page 150 of this paper.
yeah.
Here's the reference.
I do already like the way that the AI has kind of changed the way that I find information. Like if I'm doing a coding task, or learning something new about an API or something, I like the fact that I can ask questions and kind of approach it with the problem that I'm trying to solve now, or the concepts I'm trying to understand now, and ask that question, and then ask, look at what the answer is, and then ask like follow on questions, and kind of follow my path to how I want to understand or learn it, based on how I how I learn it better, or how for the, or like the problem I'm trying to solve in the moment, as opposed to searching for the question in Google, or some search engine, getting a list of things, trying to pick the thing that I think is the best, and then following the structure of the document that they have, as far as like how they want to lay out. Oh, here are the main features of the API, and here's this and this and this, and you're like, well, I got a question that's more synthesized than just a blanket answer to a question.
Yeah. It's great to know all of the options,
Yeah,
but if I'm trying to solve a problem, I need to know the options that are most likely to help me solve the problem.
So I do like more customized learning is what it seems like to me.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point.
Well, Alan, this has been very interesting. So the thing that we talked about today was Notebook LM and just how we can use that to customize a chat experience with the documents and the things that we care about or want to learn about. And I think it's something definitely we should check out if you haven't already, and just keep following it because I think it's going to just improve and get better.
I think so too, and I'm looking forward to seeing how other people
Yeah,
don't just use Notebook LM. I am interested in that, but also how they take the ideas from Notebook LM and make it their own.
that is definitely interesting. So definitely, if as you use Notebook LM, then go ahead and let us know how you're using it, what you like about it, what you think would be a cool additional feature, or something that's a gap in it. And we would love to talk about that and learn from what you're learning from it. And we can talk about it on a future episode of Two Voice Devs.
Two voice devs. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for sharing this.